When we think of the horrors of Nazi Germany, most people imagine the men who carried out Hitler's orders. But history tells a darker truth. Some of the regime's most sadistic figures were women. In this series, we're uncovering three of the most infamous: Ilse Koch, Irma Grese, and Hermina Braunsteiner. Women whose cruelty left scars that history will never forget. They called her the Hyena of Auschwitz. Irma Grese was young, blonde, and only in her early 20s, yet she became one of the most feared women of the Nazi regime. Born in Germany in 1923, Grese left school at 15 and joined the SS as a camp guard. She was posted to Ravensbrück, Auschwitz, and later Bergen-Belsen, where her cruelty became infamous. Survivors said she unleashed dogs on inmates, beat women with whips, and took pleasure in selections for the gas chambers. Her beauty earned her nicknames among prisoners, but it contrasted sharply with the sadism that defined her. After the war, she was tried by a British military tribunal at just 22 years old. Convicted of war crimes and crimes against humanity, Irma Grese was executed by hanging in 1945, becoming the youngest woman executed under British law in the 20th century. Irma Grese's story is a chilling reminder: sometimes evil wears a smiling face. They called her the bitch of Buchenwald. But for Ilse Koch, it wasn't just a nickname, it was a warning. In a regime built on cruelty, she stood out for being uniquely monstrous. Born Ilse Koch in 1906, she grew up in Dresden during the economic collapse after World War I. In a Germany riddled with bitterness, nationalism, and chaos, the Nazi Party offered a seductive promise: strength, pride, and purpose. Ilse joined in 1932, and the rest is one of the darkest biographies in Nazi history. Through the party, she met SS officer Karl Otto Koch. The two married and rose through the ranks of the Nazi system. Eventually, they were placed in charge of Buchenwald, one of the most notorious concentration camps of the Holocaust. And that is where her legend of terror begins. She hosted lavish parties, wore fine clothes, rode horses, and yet, just beyond her garden, thousands were starved, tortured, and executed. But Ilse wasn't just a bystander. She was an active predator. Survivors claimed she would parade through the camp in riding boots and gloves, randomly whipping prisoners. She was described as calculating, cruel, and disturbingly curious. Her fascination: tattooed skin. Eyewitnesses testified that Ilse selected prisoners with interesting tattoos and had them murdered, their skin preserved. Rumors swirled that she used the flesh to create book covers, gloves, even lampshades. No physical lampshade made from human skin was ever confirmed, but several pieces of preserved tattooed skin were introduced as evidence during post-war trials. And in the end, even the Nazi high command began to question her behavior. In 1947, Ilse Koch stood trial before the American military tribunal. She was one of the first women to be prosecuted for war crimes after WW2. Her coldness in court and complete denial of guilt only added to public outrage. She was sentenced to life in prison, but in a shocking twist, her sentence was commuted to just 4 years. The reasoning? Insufficient evidence for the worst of the claims. The public exploded in fury. Ilse Koch had become the face of Nazi evil, and now she was going to walk free. West Germany stepped in. In 1951, Koch was retried, this time by German courts. More testimony, more evidence, more horror. This time she received life. Again, she gave birth to a son in prison. She never expressed remorse. She claimed the entire case was a conspiracy, that she was being framed, that she was the victim. In 1967, she ended her life in her cell. She hanged herself with a bedsheet at the age of 60. Her final act was silent. Ilse Koch remains one of the most infamous women in history, a chilling reminder that sometimes evil wears lipstick and pearls. They called her the Stomping Mare. Hermine Braunsteiner was a Nazi guard whose brutality shocked even her fellow officers. Born in Vienna in 1919, she joined the SS and was assigned to the Majdanek concentration camp. Survivors said she dragged women by their hair, whipped prisoners, and was infamous for kicking inmates to death with her heavy boots. She especially targeted children, sometimes throwing them into trucks bound for the gas chambers. It was this cruelty that earned her the nickname, the Stomping Mare. After the war, Braunsteiner fled to the United States, living quietly as a housewife in New York. But her past caught up with her in the 1960s when she was exposed by Nazi hunters. She was extradited to West Germany, where she stood trial in the 1970s and was sentenced to life in prison. Hermine Braunsteiner's story is proof that sometimes the face of evil doesn't disappear. It hides in plain sight. Ilse Koch, Irma Grese, Hermina Brownsteiner. 3 women who became symbols of female Nazi sadism. But they weren't alone. In the next group, we'll expose more women of the Third Reich whose names remain forever linked with brutality. Subscribe to Ancient Crime Files, where history gets handcuffed.